You know what I love? Color, art, beauty, expression. You know what I love less? The fact that for most of human history, paint was basically just pretty poison. Like, people weren't just painting walls, they were painting their own slow demise. There's a surprisingly long history of paints and pigments that were beautiful and deeply dangerous. Some killed slowly, some disfigured, and some were made from things most people would rather not think about touching, let alone grinding into color. So today, let's speed run through history's worst paint ideas, because apparently humans looked at toxic sludge and thought it was beautiful. We begin with one of the more well-known disasters. Lead paint. Lead white was the most common color and was a white paint made from lead carbonate. This stuff was everywhere. Walls, toys, furniture. Your house wasn't decorated, it was weaponized against you. But why did people love it? Because it dried fast, looked smooth, and seemingly lasted forever. But you know what else lasts forever? Brain damage. Because over time, this paint flakes into little chips, and those chips just hang out like, hey, what if we ruined your nervous system today? That sounds fun. Symptoms of long-term exposure to this house paint included brain damage, seizures, paralysis, and personality changes. People were literally living inside slow motion poison boxes. But that isn't its only application. People, especially wealthy women in places like Renaissance Italy and Elizabethan England, used lead-based mixtures as face makeup. Queen Elizabeth I famously used a lead-based cosmetic called Venetian ceruse to achieve that ultra-pale porcelain look. Because pale skin equaled wealth, it meant you didn't have to work outside. So people were literally coating their faces in poison to say, I am rich enough to look like a haunted doll. Over time, it caused skin damage, hair loss, and long-term health decline. But hey, at least they looked expensive. Next up, the prettiest mistake ever made. Sheele's green was gorgeous, vibrant, fashionable. It was also made from copper arenate or copper azoarenate. You know, arsenic. And apart from the obvious, here's why it was also bad. It didn't just sit there being toxic, it off-gassed. Meaning in damp rooms, your wallpaper would literally just quietly release poison into the air. Who doesn't love a side of arsenic vapor with their morning coffee? Symptoms included headache, vomiting, organ failure, and needing a casket if you really committed to the vibe. Some historians think this may have also contributed to Napoleon's death. Imagine being taken out by your wallpaper. Ancient artists were insane. Probably from their paints. This bright orange paint called realgar and orpiment was made from arsenic sulfide minerals and pretty much makes it seem like artists said, what if orange, but dangerous? And artists handled them with their bare hands, just grinding up poison, all, this'll look great in the sunlight. Meanwhile, it caused skin lesions, nerve damage, and toxic dust inhalation. These pigments go way back too, like ancient Egypt, China, and Persia. They were used in manuscripts, wall paintings, and religious art because they were some of the brightest oranges and yellows available, and brightness mattered. In many cultures, vivid colors were associated with divinity, power, and royalty. So even though people knew these materials were not great, they kept using them anyway. Because if your temple art didn't glow like the sun, was it even sacred? Beautiful, rich vermilion red. Also called cinnabar, vermilion has one of the longest, most prestigious histories in art. It was used in ancient Rome, Chinese lacquerware, and Renaissance paintings. In China especially, vermilion red symbolized luck, wealth, and authority. Important documents, seals, and architecture often used it. The paint, however, was made from mercury sulfide, which means every time you used it, you were basically saying, I would like my painting and a side of neurological chaos. Symptoms of exposure included tremors, memory loss, mood changes, and straight up madness. Chronic exposure could subtly alter behavior, possibly leading to the eccentric artist stereotype being reinforced. Bright, sunny, cheerful, and perfect for sunlight and landscapes. Chrome yellow is made from lead and chromium. So it's like a toxic power couple. This paint was used by artists like Van Gogh, whose last name I know I did not pronounce correctly, but think his sunflowers, which is kind of unfortunate because it could poison you and it literally darkens over time. So some of those iconic yellows have actually darkened, meaning we're not even seeing the paintings as they were intended. Which also means not only are you getting poisoned, but your painting is betraying you. You suffer and your art turns ugly. Incredible. No notes. This next paint, which is a bright yellow that came from Cambodia, is one that I know I'm also going to mispronounce, but I will try my best. This bright yellow paint came from Cambodia and was collected as sap from the Garcinia trees. Then it was turned into a fine powder, which sounds nice and harmless until you find out the sap was poisonous and the color fades into oblivion. Gogh was widely used in East Asian paintings, Buddhist manuscripts, and traditional scroll art. It produced a warm golden yellow that symbolized knowledge, spirituality, and enlightenment. It was especially popular in regions like China and Southeast Asia. But because it fades so badly, modern viewers often don't realize how vibrant it once was. So entire artworks have basically lost their color identity. This one fell out of favor because no one was willing to say, yes, I will risk my health for a color that will vanish, which I think is solid decision making. Okay, this next one is not toxic and it's more of a dye than a paint, but I just had to include it because it's made from crushed sea snails. Tyrian purple was primarily produced from the hypobronchial gland mucus of the Mediterranean carnivorous sea snails. The main species used was Bolinus brandaris, or the spiny dye murex. These snails are found in the eastern Mediterranean and were collected in massive quantities, with up to 12,000 snails needed to create just 1 gram of dye. They were either crushed or left to decay on the beach to extract the dye. Thousands of them. Rotting. In piles. The result was a beautiful purple dye, and entire coastlines smelling like death, ammonia, and regret. Luxury used to literally stink. Tyrian purple was so expensive that in ancient Rome, only elites and sometimes only the emperor were allowed to wear it. We're talking laws, regulations, purple police. Emperor Nero reportedly reserved certain shades strictly for himself, and Cleopatra was also said to have dyed her sails purple as an absolute flex whenever she sailed into other lands. Bitumen paint was made from petroleum-based tar, which already sounds like a bad idea. But wait, it gets worse! It never fully dries, so paintings made with it melt, crack, and warp over time. Some works have literally changed composition because the paint moved. Bitumen or bitumen became popular in the 18th and 19th centuries, especially among artists chasing dramatic, moody tones. Also, sometimes it was made from actual mummies. Yes, crushed ancient Egyptians. So your painting isn't just melting, it's haunted. Honestly, the things mummies have been used for could be an entire video on its own. Our next paint is not toxic! Bone black was widely used because it produced a deep, stable black, something that was actually really hard to achieve. Artists in the Renaissance and beyond relied on it for shadows, depth, and contrast. It was especially useful in oil painting, where subtle tonal shifts mattered. Bone black has a very appropriate name since it's made from charred animal bones, including ivory. So next time you use it, just remember, you're painting with a powdered skeleton. I suppose goths need art supplies too. This green pigment came from scraping the pale teal colored corrosion off copper, which is where it gets its name, verdigris. Because it's from decaying copper, it means it's mildly toxic, it irritates skin, and it can make you sick if ingested. So yes, this is literally decay turned into art. Before stable green pigments existed like Sheele's green, verdigris was the go-to. It appears in medieval manuscripts, Renaissance paintings, and decorative arts. Artists loved its bright coppery green. And while I love a recycling moment, it seems poorly thought out. Indian yellow paint was prized in the 18th and 19th centuries for its transparency, warm glow, and layering ability. It was used by British artists working in India and beyond. Painters loved how it interacted with light. It made paintings feel almost luminous. Only problem? The lovely orangey yellow paint was historically rumored to come from cow urine. Specifically cows fed only mango leaves, which raises several questions, including why are we doing this, and who the hell was the first person to do it? Van Gogh also used this pigment for his famous Starry Night painting. It seems like if it was yellow and of a questionable origin, Van Gogh was all over it, even if it meant putting cow pee on his canvas. After that brief foray into non-toxic paints, we're back into full nightmare mode. Radium paint wasn't about art, it was about technology and modern life. It was used on watches, clocks, and instruments because it glowed in the dark. During a time when glowing things felt futuristic and exciting, radium was seen as cutting edge and not as a means of radiation poisoning. Workers were told to lick their brushes to keep them sharp while using the paint, so they were literally ingesting radioactive material. The results are horrific, and I'm giving you a warning now that these pictures aren't pretty. Bone decay, jaw disintegration, which was so common it had to name radium jaw, cancer, and bodies that literally glowed were the outcome of using this paint. The workers that used this paint to coat watch faces and other items became known as the radium girls, which sounds cute until you realize it absolutely is not. This became a major labor rights case in US history, helping push forward workplace safety laws and corporate accountability. So while it's horrifying, it also led to real change. Here's another uranium-based paint. Fiesta Red used uranium oxide. In the early 20th century, uranium-based colors were weirdly trendy, even on plates. You know, for eating. Bright, glowing materials felt modern and exciting. Strangely, this color didn't fall out of use because of the radiation it leaked, but because during World War II, uranium was banned from civilian use to save it for the war effort. Later, they brought the plates and glaze back with depleted uranium, like, don't worry, it's only slightly less radioactive, which is not comforting. Bonus round. This isn't a paint, but it's still color related, so I think it counts enough. This vintage glass glows beautifully under UV light because it contains, you guessed it, uranium! These pieces, while beautiful, caused low-level radiation exposure. Today, these pieces are considered collectibles, but be warned, they are still faintly radioactive, so maybe don't lick it. So what have we learned? Humans love color, humans will ignore literally any red flag for aesthetics. At least half of art history is just, so what if this poisons me? It will make my art pop. Art school used to be less expensive and more medically concerning. Luckily, modern paint is boring, safe, and non-toxic. For the most part. And honestly, good, because I personally would like my hobbies to involve less radiation and cause fewer skeletons. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? You don't say. Got it in before you meowed.